Hello, and welcome back to Natural Word English. I'm Claire, and every single day I bring you advanced vocabulary that you can actually use in your real life, not vocabulary that just sits quietly in a notebook and never comes out of your mouth. If today is your first time here, I want you to understand something before we even begin. You do not have a listening problem. You have a training problem. For years, you were taught English. One clean, careful sentence at a time, and now you're trying to use that training in a world where people speak in a rush, blend their words together, and expect you to keep up. That's not fair to you, and it's not your fault. But in the next few minutes, we are going to fix the actual issue, and we're going to do it with real, elevated vocabulary that upgrades not just what you understand, but what you say back. So, here's the promise for today. By the end of this video, you will walk away with more than 60 pieces of advanced C1 to C2 level vocabulary, every single one of them wrapped inside a real situation you might face at work, in a relationship, while traveling, or simply while trying to sound like a more capable, more articulate version of yourself. This isn't a list you memorize and forget. This is vocabulary in context, vocabulary you'll hear in a sentence, see used in a dialogue, and then say out loud yourself before we move to the next one. Before we go further, say this out loud, right now, wherever you are. I am ready to upgrade the way I sound. Say it with confidence. Good. That's the energy we're keeping for the rest of this video. Let me explain quickly why learning words in context works so much better than memorizing isolated word lists, because this changes everything about how fast you improve. When you learn a word by itself, like the word meticulous, your brain stores it as a fact, similar to memorizing a phone number. It has no emotional weight, no situation attached to it, and so it fades within days. But when you learn that same word inside a story, a moment, a specific person doing something meticulous, your brain stores it as an experience. Experiences don't fade the way facts do. That's why today, every word you learn will arrive wrapped in a scene. You'll picture it, you'll hear it in a natural sentence, and then you'll use it yourself. That's the method. Simple, but powerful. Let's begin with our first block, and this one is built around the workplace because so many of you have told me that professional English is where you feel the biggest gap between what you know and what you can actually say under pressure. Picture this. You're sitting in a meeting room. The lighting is a little too bright. There's a half-empty cup of coffee in front of you, and your manager is reviewing last month's numbers on the screen. The atmosphere is tense because the results weren't what anyone expected. Our first word is candid. Candid means honest and direct, even when the truth is a little uncomfortable. Instead of just saying someone is honest, which is a very basic word, native speakers often reach for candid when they want to describe a very open, straightforward kind of honesty. Listen to this sentence. I'd like everyone to be candid about what went wrong last quarter, even if the answer isn't comfortable to hear. Do you see how much more professional and specific that sounds than simply saying, honest? Try saying that sentence out loud with me. I'd like everyone to be candid about what went wrong last quarter. Now let's put candid inside a short conversation between two coworkers, Maria and Daniel. Right after that tense meeting ends, Maria says, "That was rough. Did you feel like people were actually being candid in there, or was everyone just protecting themselves?" Daniel replies, "Honestly, only Priya was candid. Everyone else gave these vague, safe answers." Maria says, "That's what I noticed too. It's frustrating when nobody wants to just say the real problem out loud." Daniel says, "I think next time we should ask for feedback privately first. People are more candid one-on-one than in a big group. Notice how naturally candid repeats through that exchange, the same way a real word gets reinforced in real conversation. That's excellent work if you followed along and repeated after me." Let's keep that momentum going. Our second word is articulate, and this one is going to come up constantly in professional and social settings, so pay close attention. As a verb, to articulate, something means to express it clearly and effectively, usually in words. Listen to the difference in stress and rhythm here, because pronunciation matters just as much as meaning. Slowly. She struggled to articulate her frustration. Now naturally, at native speed, she struggled to articulate her frustration. Notice how the middle syllables blend together almost into lit. When spoken quickly, with the stress landing hard on that second syllables. Try repeating it with me at natural speed. She struggled to articulate her frustration. Here's a real-life situation. Imagine you're in a performance review, and your manager is trying to give you feedback about something that's been bothering the team for weeks. Your manager might say, I think what the team is trying to articulate is that communication has been unclear on this project. Or, in a more personal context, a friend might tell you, I finally learned how to articulate what I need in relationships instead of just staying silent and getting resentful. That's a huge upgrade from simply saying explain or say. Let's do a quick listening and shadowing exercise with this word before we move forward, because shadowing is one of the fastest ways to make new vocabulary stick in both your ear and your mouth. Shadowing means you listen to a sentence and immediately repeat it back with the same speed, rhythm, and emotion, almost like an echo following right behind the original voice. It's not about repeating slowly and carefully after a pause. It's about jumping in right on top of the rhythm. Let's try it now. I'll say the sentence, and the moment I finish, you say it back immediately, matching my pace as closely as you can. Ready? He couldn't quite articulate why the plan felt wrong. Now, immediately, you repeat it. Good. That immediate repetition is training your mouth and your brain to move at dictative speed instead of translating slowly in your head first. Again. Let's move to our third word, meticulous. This describes someone who pays extreme, careful attention to detail, often almost to the point of being a perfectionist. Picture a colleague named James who reviews every single line of a contract 3 times before sending it anywhere. You might say, James is meticulous about contracts. He catches mistakes nobody else even notices. Here's a stress and connected speech note for you. In fast, natural speech, meticulous about often blends together with the T sound softening, so it can sound closer to meticulous about, almost losing the hard separation between the two words. Slow version. He is meticulous about details. Fast, natural version. He is meticulous about details. Repeat that fast version with me now. Let's move into a mini dialogue using meticulous. And this time, I want you to actively participate because we're going to use a role switching technique. I'll read one character's lines, and then I'll pause, and I want you to answer as the other character, using your own words. Before I give you a sample answer, this is exactly how real spontaneous conversation practice should feel, not just passive listening. Here's the scene. You and a coworker named Alex are reviewing a big project proposal before a client meeting tomorrow morning. Alex says, I went through the budget section 3 times last night. I just want to be meticulous because if there's an error there, the client will notice immediately. Now, imagine you're speaking as the friend responding to Alex. Pause the video for a moment and answer out loud, naturally, as if you were really there. Okay, here's a sample response you might have given. That's smart. I'd rather we're meticulous now than embarrassed in front of the client tomorrow. Notice how natural and simple that response is, while still using our target word in a completely authentic way. If your answer was different, that's perfectly fine. The goal isn't a perfect match. The goal is building the reflex to respond in English immediately. Without translating first, let's add one more vocabulary layer to this workplace block before we shift topics, because I want the density of real, usable vocabulary in this video to be genuinely high, not thin and stretched out. Our fourth word is diplomatic. This describes someone who is careful, tactful, and skilled at handling sensitive situations without causing offense. Imagine your coworker, Sarah, needs to tell her manager that a deadline is unrealistic without sounding like she's complaining or making excuses. Use excuses. You could describe her approach like this. Sarah was incredibly diplomatic when she brought up the deadline issue. She didn't blame anyone. She just laid out the facts calmly. Notice the natural connected sound here too. In fast speech, was incredibly often blends into something closer to was incredibly, with the S and the following vowel merging together smoothly. Try that phrase with me at natural speed. Sarah was incredibly diplomatic. Here's a quick real-life response you can borrow for yourself. If someone ever compliments how you handled a difficult conversation, you could say, "Thanks. I really tried to stay diplomatic, even though I was frustrated." That single sentence alone will make you sound noticeably more advanced than simply saying, "I tried to stay calm." Now, before we move into our next block, let's pause for our first mini fluency check, a quick technique to help the words settle into your memory instead of just floating past you. I'm going to say 4 short prompts, and I want you to respond out loud with a full sentence using the word "I mention," using your own situation from your own life, if you can. First prompt: describe a time you had to be candid with someone, even though it was uncomfortable. Second prompt: describe something you find yourself being meticulous about, whether it's work, cooking, or even how you organize your phone. Take a moment. Say your sentences out loud right now. Nice work. That's real. Active use of new vocabulary, which is exactly the kind of practice that separates people who understand English passively from people who can actually produce it fluently under pressure. Let's shift now into our second block, and this one is centered on emotions and personality, because this is where advanced vocabulary makes the single biggest difference in how deep and mature you sound in conversation. Basic English gives you happy, sad, angry, and tired. Advanced English gives you words with texture, precision, and nuance, and that precision is often what native speakers notice immediately about a truly fluent non-native speaker. Picture this. Say, scene. It's late evening, and you're sitting across from a close friend at a small kitchen table, and they're finally opening up about something that's been bothering them for weeks. Our next word is overwhelmed. This means feeling like you have too much to handle emotionally or mentally, like the feeling is bigger than your capacity to manage it right now. Your friend might say, "Honestly, I've just felt so overwhelmed lately. Work, family, everything is piling up at once." Notice the emotional weight this word carries compared to simply saying stressed. Overwhelmed suggests you're being buried under something, not just mildly pressured by it. Let's build a longer dialogue here. Because emotional conversations deserve more than 2 quick lines back and forth. And I want to give you a real model of how a caring, natural conversation unfolds in English. Your friend, whose name is Jenna, starts. Jenna says, "I don't even know where to start. I feel so overwhelmed I can barely think straight some mornings." You respond, "That sounds really heavy. What's weighing on you the most right now?" Jenna says, "I think it's the fact that I can't seem to catch up, no matter how hard I try. Every time I finish one thing, 3 more appear." You respond, "Have you been able to talk to anyone at work about lightening the load, even a little?" Jenna says, "Not really. I guess I've been scared it'll make me look like I can't handle my job." You respond, "I don't think asking for help makes you look weak. I think it makes you look self-aware. honestly. Jenna says, maybe you're right. I think I just needed to say it out loud to someone. That 6-line exchange models exactly the kind of longer, emotionally realistic conversation native speakers actually have, not the short, robotic, 2-line exchanges you often see in textbooks. Go back and notice how naturally overwhelmed was introduced once, min, and how the conversation continued to build around it with genuine, connected responses. Our next word from this same emotional world is resilient. This describes someone who recovers quickly from difficulty, who bounces back instead of staying broken by hard situations. You might say about Jenna, later in this same story, she's had such a hard year, but she's incredibly resilient. She always finds a way to keep moving forward. Here's a pronunciation note. The stress falls on the second syllable, re-si-il, yent, and in fast speech, the final yent often softens into something closer to yent, so it flows as resilient rather than 4 separate clean syllables. Practice it with me at natural speed. She's incredibly resilient. Let's connect this to a listening skill now, because understanding fast English isn't only about vocabulary, it's also about training your ear to catch meaning even when you don't catch every single word. Here's a valuable technique. When someone speaks quickly and you don't catch everything, you don't need to panic or ask them to repeat everything. Instead, use natural, native-sounding filler responses that show you're following the main idea, like I, see, that makes sense, or simply, right, while your brain catches up with the details. Native speakers do this constantly, even with each other. Understanding fast English is about catching the main idea first, then filling in details, not translating word by word in real time. Let's practice this with a quick listening moment. I'm going to speak a little quickly now, the way a native speaker naturally would in conversation, and I want you to just catch the main idea, not every single word. Ready? So basically what happened was I got completely swamped with this client project, and on top of that, my flight got delayed, and by the time I landed, I was just running on fumes, but somehow I still made it to the meeting on time. Pause for a second. What was the main idea there? Even if you didn't catch every phrase, you probably understood that the speaker had an exhausting, chaotic day, but still managed to succeed. That's the skill. Catching the message, not memorizing the transcript in real time. Let's continue building emotional vocabulary with one more essential word. Vulnerable. This describes a state of being emotionally open, exposed, or at risk of being hurt, often in a good, honest, connecting way in personal relationships. You might hear someone say, "It took a lot of courage for him to be that vulnerable with me. He doesn't usually open up like that." This word carries real depth, and it's used constantly in conversations about relationships, therapy, friendship, and personal growth in English-speaking cultures. Here's a short real-life example you could use yourself. If a close friend shares something personal and difficult with you, you might respond, "Thank you for being so vulnerable with me." I know that wasn't easy to say. That single sentence shows emotional maturity and advanced vocabulary at the same time. Let's celebrate for a moment. Because you've just added 5 powerful, high-level words to your active vocabulary in less than 10 minutes, and each one arrived with a full scene, a natural sentence, and real practice. That's exactly the kind of progress that compounds over weeks and months into genuinely fluent, confident English. Nice work staying with me this far. We're going to keep this energy going as we move into our third block, which focuses on travel and social situations. 2 areas where advanced vocabulary instantly makes you sound more capable and more at ease, even when you're navigating something unfamiliar. Picture this scene. You've just landed in a new city for the first time. The airport is loud and slightly chaotic, and you're trying to find your way to ground transportation while your phone battery is dangerously low. Our next word is disoriented. This means feeling confused about where you are or which direction to go, often physically, but sometimes mentally as well. You might say, "I felt so disoriented walking out of the airport. Nothing was labeled clearly, and I couldn't find the exit for taxis." This is a much more precise word than simply saying confused, because it specifically captures that lost in space feeling. Let's build a role-switching moment here, because navigating a new place, often asking strangers for help, and that's a real skill worth practicing out loud. I'll read the part of a helpful local, and then I'll pause so you can respond as the traveler asking for directions. Before I give you a sample response, the local says, "You look a little lost. Can I help you find something?" Now, imagine you're the traveler. Pause and respond out loud, explaining that you feel disoriented and need directions to the train station. Here's a sample response. "Thank you so much. I'm honestly a bit disoriented. Do you know which way the train station is from here?" Notice how naturally disoriented fits into a real, polite request for help. Instead of sounding like a word pulled from a textbook, our next word is spontaneous. This describes doing something without planning it in advance, acting on impulse in a fun, often exciting way. Imagine you're traveling with a friend, and instead of following your planned itinerary, you decide to jump on a random local bus just to see where it goes. You might later tell someone, "It was completely spontaneous. We just picked a bus and rode it until something looked interesting." This word carries a light, adventurous energy that's very common in travel stories and casual conversation. Let's practice a longer 4-line dialogue here between 2 friends, Mia and Tom, right after that spontaneous bus adventure. Mia says, "I can't believe we just did that. That was so spontaneous, even for us." Tom says, "Honestly, it's probably my favorite part of the whole trip so far." Mia says, Same. I feel like when we plan everything too much, we miss moments like this. Tom says, exactly. Let's stay a little more spontaneous for the rest of the trip. That's the kind of natural back and forth rhythm. Real friends use casual, warm, and built around one shared vocabulary word without sounding forced or repetitive. Let's keep moving through this trip together. Because there's a lot more vocabulary waiting for us in this scene. A few hours later, Mia and Tom end up at a small night market, and the smell of grilled food fills the air. Lanterns are strung between the stalls, and vendors are calling out to passers-by in a mix of languages. It's loud, colorful, and a little overwhelming in the best possible way. Our next word is immersive. This describes an experience so complete and surrounding that you feel fully absorbed in it, almost like it wraps around you entirely. Tom might say, "This market is so immersive, I actually forgot I was a tourist for a second." Notice how much more vivid this is than simply saying the market was interesting. Immersive tells us the experience pulled the speaker completely inside it. Here's a quick pronunciation and connected speech note. In fast, natural speech, so immersive, often blends together with the O and the following vowel almost merging, so it flows closer to so immersive rather than two separate, clearly divided words. Slow version. This market is so immersive. Fast, natural version. This market is so immersive. Try that with me at natural speed now. Let's add one more travel social word here. Spontaneously cousin word. Candid. No, wait, we already used that one. So let's move to something fresh. Unassuming. This describes someone or something modest, not flashy, not trying to draw attention. Often in a quietly impressive way. Imagine Mia and Tom stumble into a tiny, unassuming food stall tucked behind two bigger, louder restaurants, and it turns out to have the best food in the entire market. Mia might say, "That little stall looked so unassuming, but it was honestly the best meal of the whole trip." This word is incredibly useful for describing people too, like a coworker who's brilliant but never brags about it. You could say, "He's one of the most unassuming people I know. You'd never guess how accomplished he actually is." Let's do a shadowing moment with this word right now. I'll say the sentence, and immediately, without any pause, you echo it back at the same speed. Ready? He's one of the most unassuming people I know. Now, immediately repeat it. Good. That immediate echo is exactly the muscle memory we're building throughout this video. Now let's shift into our fourth content block, moving into the world of technology and modern daily life, because so much of our real conversation today happens around apps, screens, notifications, and the strange, sometimes exhausting relationship we all have with our devices. Picture this scene. You're sitting on your couch on a Sunday evening, and you've just realized you've been scrolling on your phone for almost 2 hours without noticing the time pass at all. Our next word is mindless. This describes an action done automatically without real thought or attention, almost like your brain switched off while your body kept going. You might say, I didn't even mean to spend that long online. It was just mindless scrolling. This word captures that specific, slightly guilty feeling so many of us know well. Let's build a mini dialogue here between two roommates, Chloe and Sam, having a casual evening conversation about this exact habit. Chloe says, I looked up, and somehow 2 hours had passed. I don't even remember what I was looking at. Sam says, yeah, it's so easy to fall into that. Mindless scrolling is basically a trap at this point. Chloe says, I keep telling myself I'll set a limit on my apps, but I never actually do it. Sam says, same here. Maybe we should try leaving our phones in another room after dinner. Chloe says, honestly, that might actually work. Let's try it tonight. Notice, again, that longer 4 to 6 line rhythm with two real people responding naturally to each other, not just reciting facts back and forth. That's the model we want you, absorbing every single time. Our next word from this block is streamline. As a verb, this means to make a process simpler, faster, and more efficient by removing unnecessary steps. In a technology or work context, you'll hear this constantly. Someone might say, this new app really streamlines the whole process. I used to spend 20 minutes on this, and now it takes 2. Here's a real workplace example. Imagine your manager introducing a new tool in a meeting. They might say, we're hoping this software will streamline our reporting process so nobody has to manually update 5 different spreadsheets anymore. That's a very natural, very common use of this word in professional English. Let's do a quick phonetic and connected speech drill with this word, because streamline the process is a phrase that blends together very naturally at native speed. Slow version. It will streamline the process. Fast, natural version. It will streamline the process. Notice how streamline the almost merges into one smooth unit with the N and T. Sounds flowing together rather than staying sharply separated. Try that with me now at natural speed. Let's add one more word here. Before we take a short breathing pause, because I want to keep the pace varied and comfortable rather than rushing you through word after word without any change in rhythm. Our word is intuitive. This describes something, often technology or a design, that feels natural and easy to understand without needing much explanation. You might say, honestly, the new interface is so intuitive. I didn't even need to read the instructions. This word can also describe a person's way of thinking. Someone who understands things quickly, almost instinctively, without needing everything spelled out for them. You could say, she's incredibly intuitive. She picked up on the problem before anyone even explained it. Now let's slow down together for a moment. Close your eyes if you're in a safe place to do so, and just take one slow breath in and one slow breath out. This isn't a break from learning. It's actually part of it, because giving your brain small moments of rest between dense vocabulary blocks helps everything we've covered so far settle in more deeply instead of blurring together. Just breathe, relax your shoulders, and when you're ready, we'll continue. Good. Let's keep going, because there's still so much valuable vocabulary ahead of us. Let's move now into our fifth block, focused on personality and how we describe people, because this is one of the richest areas for advanced English, and it's where you'll notice the biggest gap between basic descriptions like nice or smart and the kind of nuanced, specific language native speakers actually use. Picture this scene. You're at a friend's birthday dinner, sitting around a long table, and the conversation turns to someone who couldn't make it tonight. A mutual friend named Ben. Our next word is perceptive. This describes someone who notices things quickly and understands situations, feelings, or details that others might miss. Someone at the table might say, "Ben is so perceptive. He always seems to know when something's wrong with someone before they even say anything." This is a wonderful upgrade from simply saying someone is smart or observant, because perceptive specifically highlights emotional and situational awareness. Let's build this into a longer dialogue between two friends at the table, Grace and Noah. Grace says, "I really miss having Ben around. He's always the first one to notice if someone's having a rough day." Noah says, "Right? He's incredibly perceptive. I've never met anyone who reads a room that well." Grace says, "It's kind of a gift, honestly. Most people don't even notice those little signals." Noah says, "I think that's part of why everyone trusts him so much. He actually pays attention." Grace says, "We should invite him to the next thing. I feel like the group dynamic is just better with him around." Notice how naturally this 6-line conversation flows, built entirely around real feelings, and a single well-placed vocabulary word, exactly the kind of exchange you might actually have with your own friends. Our next word is candor, which is the noun form related to our earlier word, candid. Candor means openness and honesty in the way someone speaks or communicates. You might say, "I really appreciate her candor. She never sugarcoats anything, but she's never cruel about it either." This word carries a slightly more formal, almost respectful tone compared to simply saying honesty. Let's now practice a role-switching exercise using this word, because I want you actively producing language, not just listening passively. I'll read one side of a short conversation between two coworkers discussing feedback from a difficult client meeting, and then I'll pause for you to respond as the other person before giving you a sample answer. Your coworker says, "The client was pretty blunt in that meeting, wasn't he? I wasn't expecting that level of honesty." Now, pause the video and respond out loud using the word candor naturally in your response. Here's a sample response. "Yeah, But honestly, I respected his candor. It's better than sitting through a meeting full of vague, polite nonsense. Notice how naturally that response fits into real workplace conversation, while still showcasing an advanced, precise vocabulary word. Let's add 2 more personality words quickly because I want to keep the density of this video high. Our next word is tenacious. This describes someone who holds on firmly to a goal or task, refusing to give up even when things get difficult. You might describe a coworker like this. She's incredibly tenacious. She spent 3 weeks trying to solve that bug when everyone else had given up. And our next word is unpretentious, which describes someone who doesn't try to seem more important, wealthy, or impressive than they actually are, someone genuinely humble in how they present themselves. You might say, even after becoming successful, he stayed completely unpretentious. He still drives the same old car and shops at the same grocery store. Let's pause for a second fluency check here. Another quick moment where you actively produce language instead of just absorbing it. I'll give you 2 prompts, and I want you to respond out loud with full sentences. First prompt. Describe someone in your life who you would call perceptive and explain why. Second prompt. Describe a moment when you appreciated someone's candor, even if the truth was a little uncomfortable to hear. Take a moment now and say your answers out loud. That's excellent, real progress. Because every time you produce a sentence like that from your own life, you're building a much stronger, longer-lasting connection to the word than lasting repetition ever could. Let's move now into a deeper listening and pronunciation section. Because understanding fast native speech requires more than vocabulary. It also requires training your ear to recognize the specific sound patterns that appear again and again in real conversation. Let's talk about intonation for a moment. It's specifically the difference between rising intonation at the end of questions and falling intonation at the end of statements, because this single pattern helps you instantly recognize whether someone is asking something or simply stating a fact, even in fast, blended speech. Listen to this question with a clear rise at the end. Are you coming to the meeting? Now listen to this statement with a clear fall at the end. I'm coming to the meeting. Even if the words blur together at native speed, that rise or fall in pitch gives you a powerful clue about what kind of sentence you're hearing. Try both of these yourself, exaggerating the rise and fall so your ear and your voice both get used to the pattern. Let's look at one more extremely common connected speech pattern before we continue. The blending of want to into wanna and going to into gonna in fast, casual speech. Listen to the slow version first. I want to try that new restaurant. Now, the fast, natural version. I want to try that new restaurant. And now, I am going to call her later. Slow versus I'm going to call her later. Fast and natural. These blended forms aren't lazy or incorrect. They're simply how native speakers actually talk in real, relaxed conversation, and recognizing them instantly removes a huge barrier to understanding fast English. Let's do one final main idea listening exercise before we move into our next content block, because I want to reinforce this skill one more time. I'm going to speak quickly and naturally. And again, your only job is to catch the overall meaning, not every individual word. Ready? So we ended up rescheduling the whole trip because the flights got insanely expensive last minute. And honestly, it worked out better anyway, since the weather's supposed to be way nicer next month. Pause for a moment. What was the main idea? Even without catching every word, you likely understood that plans changed because of expensive flights, and the change turned out to be a good thing. That's exactly the skill we're building. Catching meaning quickly without freezing up over every single word. Let's move into our sixth block now, focused on relationships and communication between people who care about each other, because this is where advanced vocabulary can completely transform how deep and mature your conversations feel, especially with a partner, a close friend, or a family member. Picture this scene. It's a quiet Sunday morning, and two partners, Leah and Marcus, are having coffee together at their kitchen table, gently talking through something that's been sitting unspoken between them for a couple of weeks. Our next word is reconcile, and as a verb, this means to bring two things back into agreement, or to resolve a conflict between people, restoring harmony after a disagreement. Leah might say, I think we need to actually reconcile this instead of just avoiding it every time it comes up. Notice how much more mature and intentional this sounds compared to simply saying, fix it or talk about it. Let's build a longer, realistic dialogue here, because relationship conversations deserve the same depth we gave to our earlier emotional block. Leah says, I've been thinking about what you said last week, and I don't think we ever really reconciled it. It just got quiet. Marcus says, you're right, I think. I just didn't know how to bring it back up without it turning into another argument. Leah says, I don't want to argue either. I just want us to actually talk it through, even if it's uncomfortable. Marcus says, okay. I think part of what bothered me was feeling like my side wasn't really heard. Leah says, that makes sense. I want to understand that better. Can you walk me through it again? Marcus says, yeah. I think if we can reconcile this properly, I'll feel a lot lighter going into the week. That 6-line exchange models exactly how real couples talk through difficult moments in English. Slowly, gently, without rushing. And it's a perfect example of the kind of emotionally intelligent conversation advanced vocabulary allows you to have. Our next word is reassure. This means to say or do something that removes someone's doubts or fears to comfort them by confirming that everything is okay. Marcus might later say, "I just wanted to reassure you that none of this changes how much I care about us." This word is incredibly useful in both romantic and professional contexts. A manager might say to a nervous new employee, "I want to reassure you, everyone struggles during their first month. You're doing better than you think." Let's do a quick shadowing drill with this word right now. I'll say the sentence, and immediately you echo it back at the same natural speed. No pause, no hesitation. Ready? "I just wanted to reassure you that everything's fine." Now, immediately, repeat it back to me. Good. That's exactly the reflex we want building throughout this video. Our next word is empathetic. This describes someone who deeply understands and shares the feelings of another person, someone who genuinely connects with what someone else is going through, rather than just sympathizing from a distance. You might say, "She's one of the most empathetic people I know. She never makes you feel judged when you open up to her." Here's a quick pronunciation note. The stress falls on the second syllable, e, e. And in fast speech, the final syllables often blend together smoothly, almost sounding like empath-a-tick, rather than four crisp, separated sounds. Practice that with me now at natural speed. Let's add one final relationship word to this block, genuine. This describes something real, sincere, and authentic without any pretending or performance behind it. You might say, "What I love about our friendship is that it's always felt genuine, never forced or fake." This is one of those words that instantly makes your English sound warmer and more emotionally intelligent, whether you're talking about a person, a compliment, or an entire relationship. Let's move now into our seventh block, focused on personal growth and education, because this is an area where advanced vocabulary allows you to talk about your own development, your goals, and your challenges with real precision and confidence. Picture this scene. You're sitting at a desk late at night, books and notes spread out in front of you, working toward a certification exam that feels genuinely difficult, and progress has felt painfully slow for the past few weeks. Our next word is daunting. This describes something that feels intimidating or overwhelming, especially because of its size, difficulty, or importance. You might say, "This exam feels so daunting. There's just so much material to cover." This word captures that specific feeling of facing something big and slightly frightening, much more precisely than simply saying something is hard. Let's practice a role-switching moment here. I'll read the voice of a supportive friend, checking in on your progress, and then I'll pause so you can respond as the person studying before I give you a sample answer. Your friend says, "How's the studying going? You've been at this for weeks now." Now pause the video and respond out loud, describing how daunting the material feels using your own words. Here's a sample response. "Honestly, it's been really daunting. Some nights I open the material and just feel completely overwhelmed before I even start. Notice how naturally daunting fits into that honest, vulnerable moment. Exactly the kind of real conversation you might actually have with a supportive friend. Our next word is incremental. This describes something that happens gradually, in small steps, rather than all at once, in one big jump. A mentor might tell you, progress with something like this is always incremental. You won't notice it day to day, but looking back over a month, it adds up enormously. This word is incredibly useful when talking about learning, habits, fitness, or any long-term goal, because it reframes slow progress as valuable rather than disappointing. Let's connect this to our sensory self-practice exercise. Now, a technique designed to turn today's vocabulary into an actual daily habit, rather than something you only use inside this video. Here's how it works. I want you to look around wherever you are right now and describe your surroundings out loud in English using at least 3 of the words we've covered today. Don't worry about making it perfect. Just notice things around you and describe them naturally. For example, you might say something like, "Yee yees, now there's a plant beside my desk that looks a little unassuming, but it's actually survived 3 years without much attention. I can hear some birds outside. And honestly, after a long day, I feel pretty overwhelmed, but also weirdly resilient." Try this yourself right now, out loud, using your own surroundings and at least 3 words from today's lesson. That kind of practice is what turns passive vocabulary into active automatic language, because you're not just remembering a word, you're using it to describe your real immediate world. Let's add 2 final words to this growth-focused block. Our next word is proficient. Fit. This describes having a high level of skill or competence in something, often through consistent practice and experience. You might say, after 2 years of daily practice, she's become genuinely proficient in Spanish, not just conversational, but truly comfortable. And our final word for this block is invaluable. This describes something so useful or valuable that it can't really be measured, something extremely important to have. A student might say, having a mentor during my first year at this job was absolutely invaluable. I would have made so many more mistakes without her guidance. Let's pause again for a quick fluency check, because I want to keep reinforcing active production throughout this entire video rather than saving it all for the very end. Knack. I'll give you 2 prompts. First prompt. Describe something in your life right now that feels daunting and explain why. Second prompt. Describe a skill you'd like to become proficient in over the next year. Take a moment and answer both of these out loud in full sentences using your own real situation. Great work staying engaged this deep into the video. That consistency is exactly what separates people who passively watch English content for months without proving from people who genuinely become fluent within a realistic time frame. Let's move now into a deeper connected speech and shadowing section because I want to give you several more specific phonetic patterns before we reach our final blocks and the fluency round. Let's talk about the sound pattern in phrases like, "What are you?" and "Did you?" because these two patterns appear constantly in real conversation and often confuse learners the most. Listen to the slow version first. "What are you doing this weekend?" Now the fast, natural version. "What are you doing this weekend?" Notice how "what are you" compresses down into something closer to wa-cha, with the individual words almost disappearing into one smooth unit. Now let's look at "did you?" Slow version. "Did you finish the report?" Fast, natural version. "Did you finish the report?" Here, "did you" often blends into something closer to "did you," with the D and Y sounds merging together. These aren't separate rules to memorize one by one. They're patterns that repeat constantly across thousands of everyday sentences, and once your ear catches the pattern, you'll start recognizing it everywhere, almost automatically. Let's do one more shadowing round using a longer sentence because I want you comfortable shadowing full sentences, not just short vocabulary phrases. I'll say the sentence once at natural speed, and then immediately, without any pause, you echo it back as closely as you can to my rhythm and speed. Ready? I know it feels daunting right now, but honestly, this kind of progress is always incremental. Now, immediately, repeat that back. Very good. That's real, active shadowing practice. And the more consistently you do this, even for just a few minutes a day outside of this video, the faster your natural speaking rhythm will improve. Let's move into our 8th and final major vocabulary block, focused on general life wisdom and reflection, because I want to end this vocabulary journey with words that carry real emotional and intellectual weight, the kind of words that make you sound thoughtful and mature in almost any conversation. Picture this final scene. It's the end of a long day, and you're sitting somewhere quiet, maybe on your balcony, maybe by a window, just reflecting on everything that's happened recently in your life. Our next word is profound. This describes something deeply meaningful, significant, or intellectually and emotionally impactful, far beyond something merely interesting. You might say, "That conversation with my grandmother had such a profound impact on how I see my own choices now." This word carries real depth, and it's frequently used to describe experiences, realizations, or pieces of advice that genuinely change how someone thinks. Our next word is introspective. This describes the act of examining your own thoughts, feelings, and motivations closely, looking inward rather than outward. You might say, "I've been feeling really introspective lately, just thinking a lot about what I actually want versus what I think I'm supposed to want." This word pairs beautifully with profound and together they let you talk about your inner life with real precision. Let's finish this. Block. With one more word, authentic. This describes being true to your real self, genuine, without pretending to be something you're not in order to please others. You might say, the older I get, the more I just want to live authentically, even if that means disappointing a few people along the way. This word has become incredibly common in modern English conversation, especially around personal growth, relationships, and identity. Let's move now into our fluency round, the part of this video where we stop introducing new words and instead move quickly through everything we've learned today. Back to back. Back. Without long pauses. So your brain gets one final, high energy pass through all of this vocabulary while it's still fresh. I'm going to go through these words rapidly, and I want you to say a short sentence with each one right after I say it, even if it's just 3 or 4 words. Don't overthink it, just react quickly. Ready? Here we go. Candid. Say something using candid. Articulate. Say something using articulate. Meticulous. Say something using meticulous. Diplomatic. Say something using diplomatic. Overwhelmed. Say something using overwhelmed. Resilient. Say something using resilient. Vulnerable. Say something using vulnerable. Disoriented. Say something using disoriented. Spontaneous. Say something using spontaneous. Immersive. Say something using immersive. Unassuming. Say something using unassuming. Mindless. Say something using mindless. Ream line. Say something using streamline. Intuitive. Say something using intuitive. Perceptive. Say something using perceptive. Candor. Say something using candor. Tenacious. Say something using tenacious. Unpretentious. Say something using unpretentious. Reconcile. Say something using reconcile. Reassure. Say something using reassure. Empathetic. Say something using empathetic. Genuine. Say something using genuine. Daunting. Say something using daunting. Incremental. Say something using incremental. Proficient. Say something using proficient. Invaluable. Say something using invaluable. Profound. Say something using profound. Introspective. Say something using introspective. Authentic. Say something using authentic. That's an incredible amount of active production in just a couple of minutes. And if you actually said something out loud for each one, even something short and imperfect, you just did more real speaking practice than most people do in an entire week of passive listening. That's exactly the kind of consistent, active effort that turns advanced vocabulary from something you recognize into something you actually own. Let me remind you quickly why this method works so well, because I want you to understand this on a deeper level, not just trust me blindly. Every single word today arrived with a real scene attached to it. A kitchen table, a night market, a late-night study session, a quiet moment on a balcony. Your brain doesn't remember isolated facts well, but it remembers stories, images, and emotions extremely well. That's why days from now, when you're in a real conversation and you want to describe someone as unassuming, or admit that something feels daunting, or thank a friend for their candor, your brain won't be searching through a flat list of words. It'll be reaching back into a scene, a feeling, a moment you already lived through once, even if only in your imagination while watching this video. Before we finish completely, let's do one more full sensory self-practice exercise, because I want this habit to be the very last thing fresh in your mind as this video ends. Look around you again, wherever you are right now, and speak out loud in English for about 30 seconds, describing your surroundings, your mood, or your day, and try to naturally use at least 4 or 5 words from today's lesson. Don't plan it perfectly. Just let it come out naturally, the same way a genuinely fluent person would speak without preparing every sentence in advance. Take your time and start whenever you're ready. However that felt, whether smooth or a little clumsy, that's real progress. Fluency isn't built in one perfect attempt. It's built through incremental repetition. Exactly the kind of practice you just did. Now, here's your specific call to action for today, and I want this to be genuinely measurable, not just a vague like and subscribe request. Before you close this video, I want you to write one comment using at least 2 words from today's lesson, describing something real from your own life. It could be 1 sentence, it could be 2. For example, you might write something like, "My best friend is incredibly perceptive, and honestly, her candor is one of the things I appreciate most about her." That's it. That's the entire assignment. Not because I need the comment for the algorithm, but because the act of writing it forces your brain to actively retrieve and use these words one more time, which dramatically increases how long they stay with you. If you found today's video valuable, and if you can already feel these words sitting a little more comfortably in your mind than basic vocabulary, the vocabulary usually does, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Natural Word English, because we upload advanced, real context vocabulary lessons just like this one regularly, always wrapped in real situations, real dialogues, and real practice, never just flat lists to memorize and forget. Remember what I told you at the very beginning of this video. You were never the problem. You were simply trained the wrong way for years, taught to memorize instead of experience, taught to translate instead of react, taught vocabulary lists instead of vocabulary stories. Today, you practiced a completely different way. And if you keep showing up for it, even just a little bit, each day, the gap between the English you understand and the English you can actually speak will keep closing. faster than you probably expect. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I'm Claire. This has been Natural Word English, and I'll see you in the next video.